Hello, everyone. We're back on the Off the Deck podcast today. Very excited to have a special guest, a friend of mine, Mr. Mark Hesse. Mark Hesse is in the Indiana Swimming Hall of Fame. He is a Georgetown graduate. He is a fantastic coach. He coached many places in Indiana, but including Carmel, but also Washington Township and out in Crawfordsville. He's been at USA Swimming for I don't know how long. He just kind of left that position recently, but he's now coaching again in Colorado Springs. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Hesse. Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks. It's awesome to be on here. Love what you're doing. Spreading all the good word about swimming and interviewing. So many great coaches and so many great, former swimmers. I think that's really, really cool for you and for your program there at Carmel to have these alumni that are willing to come back and share their experiences.
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't traumatize them too much for them to share. No, but, I love being able to catch up with alumni, and I love talking the sport, and I love to learn where people are at in their lives and the lessons that they learned. So, and I know I learned an incredible amount from you, Mark. I don't know if you take any heart with, joy in that, but I think that you do. But I know you and I first met, and I always admired you. I was the head age group coach at Carmel. You were coaching, kind of building this kind of juggernaut at North Central, who at the time was challenging Carmel. And you just kind of built something from nothing. So, maybe take us back. How did you get involved in coaching, and what brought you to Indiana?
So how did I get involved with coaching? That's a great question. I grew up a swimmer like most of us did. I was not very good, nowhere near as accomplished as you were. As in my own personal swimming journey, I did swim in college at Georgetown, and actually was my head coach at Georgetown that offered me my first coaching job as an assistant coach for him in a summer league in Northern Virginia. And if anyone out there is familiar with the Northern Virginia Swim League, it's this massive swimming organization in the summertime in just outside DC in the suburbs there in Virginia, with probably now over 150 teams. When I was there, I think there were 96 neighborhood swim teams that were in this league, and each team had anywhere from 50 to 150 kids on the team, depending on how big their neighborhood was. And I just, that first summer, I fell in love with it and decided that was at least going to be what I did in the summer. And my coach at Georgetown, Steve Wilson, who was my coach for my freshman year, and then Jeff Bryan, who coached there for the last 3 years of my time at Georgetown, kind of always encouraged me to be a student of the sport and to study about it. And the cool thing was I had a little bit of success there in the summer league and really enjoyed doing it, and decided I wanted to keep doing it. Spent 2 seasons first as a grad assistant and then as an assistant coach at Georgetown, and then actually started a team in Northern Virginia called the Burke Barracudas, which eventually merged with Curl and became Curl Burke, which is now NCAP. So I did coach that Burke team for a few years, and again we had some success. We grew to be the 3rd or 4th best team in the LSC, and when you were competing with teams like Curl at the time and Rockville Montgomery and Solitar were pretty large programs. So we were very successful, and I always felt like there was something more for me out there, and ended up taking a job as a head age group coach down at Mission Bay in South Florida, working for Mark Schubert, and alongside Jack Roach and Larry Leibowitz, some obviously some big names in USA swimming history. And I guess from there it just took off, and got married, and my wife took a job in Indianapolis, and that's how we moved to Indiana. The only guy I knew in Indy was Tom Avicius, and I called him up and said, "Hey, you know of any coaching jobs?" And he said, "Funny you should ask." And gave me a job coaching the Barracudas and the Tigersharks there with Carmel Swim Club. And I also managed to land the job coaching the girls team at North Central. And that was all great for one season. And then I think the Carmel North Central rivalry kind of got the best of it. And I was told that if I wanted to stay coaching at Carmel, I needed to leave North Central. And I didn't want to do that at that point. So that's when I took the job with Washington Township and started to really build the program there. We had a great foundation. Tom Jewell and Paula Smith were kind of the architects of a really solid age group program, but there wasn't much on the senior side when I started there, and we just started to build that up, and eventually had some great success, a lot of second place finishes in the girls' high school state meet, and a state championship, along with a couple runner-ups on the boys' side. And that was a lot of fun building that program. And for those of you that aren't aware of geography in Indiana, Carmel High School and North Central High School are about 6 or 7 miles apart.
Yep.
So a lot of rivalry there, a lot of crossover of kids at times. And it was a lot of fun to have that, that kind of challenge so nearby, at least for us coming up, having a team to chase and a team to aspire to be competitive with. And I think that was a lot of what allowed us to be successful, is because we were always racing against good swimmers. And I think that legacy has continued in the entire Indianapolis area. You look at Fishers and Zionsville, and what Carmel's continue to do, and what North Central's continue to do. And so it's a great place to coach swimming. It's a great place to be a swimmer.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, Mark, and I did not know this, is you and I started coaching the same groups at Carmel, because I also started at Carmel as the Tigershark coach.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then I became head age group coach. I think I started in September and became head age group coach in January. But I was coaching the night tens, right?
Yep.
So you obviously had a tremendous amount of success in Indiana, and then you went from North Central over to Crawfordsville, and you got a 50-meter pool, and then after you left, they built a 50-meter pool at North Central. Right. And I've often wondered, I don't know if you have at all, if you would have stayed, what that program would have been. Not to say it was bad, but I knew you were I think my career actually jumped forward when you left, because the stability at that club they didn't have it year after year like Carmel.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I've thought about that. You always think about that. What if? Yeah. And I think, one of the strengths of our program at Washington Township was the coaching staff, and not just me. the whole group of us, everybody bought into the vision that we had of what it took to be successful, and where we wanted to go with the program, and how we wanted to take care of the kids. And I was very fortunate. I had every single coach on my staff had been a head coach somewhere previously. So there was a lot of comfort in knowing that if we had to switch around and somebody had to fill in for me, or I had to fill in for somebody, that the kids were going to be taken care of. And it was really, it was neat to be able to give autonomy to those coaches with their groups, and know that, that those kids were going to be coached well. And I think that's something that, is very rare. And I think you look at, we were talking before we went on the air here, we're talking about what I saw when I worked for USA Swimming for 9 years, traveling around the country, that made teams successful. I think having a great coaching staff that has the same vision, and that is comfortable with each other and comfortable in multiple roles, is so important. And so, my message to coaches, head coaches out there, and my message to parent boards out there is, if you've got good coaches, hang on to them and cultivate them. And as a head coach, don't be afraid to give your assistant coaches responsibility, and autonomy in what they're doing. And they don't, to be able to get to a place where you don't have to oversee every workout, or feel like you need to see a detailed practice plan every day from a coach, is pretty awesome. And it's a luxury that maybe I didn't always appreciate right in the moment there at Washington Township. But I think if we'd been able to keep that staff together, and when we would have gotten that 50-meter pool, I'm not sure there was any limit on what we could have accomplished. And it just wasn't meant to be at that time. So I guess I'm glad I gave you a little boost.
Yeah, well, I think there have been some great coaches, and I've had a lot of friends who've coached through there. Is just a tough environment, I feel like, to coach in. So, I think moving forward, now that you've kind of been around the country, you talked about the ability of coaches. I like the fact that you were like, coach a lot of groups and mesh with each other and see the same vision. What are some of the other things maybe you've seen from successful clubs, and maybe what are some of the things you're seeing from clubs who maybe aren't as successful? Sometimes I think we also need to look at what doesn't work.
Well, I think the first thing is that, and I see it on both sides, the successful teams and the teams that struggle, is that shared vision, and everybody really being on the same page, of what the team is about, what the team wants to accomplish. And that just doesn't just include the coaching staff, but that includes your parents. That includes, whoever owns or controls the facility. And being able, I think, as a head coach, or as a program, to identify what your values are, what's your vision, we've talked about this, I think, when I visited, your team, what the why is behind the program. And it can't just be about swimming fast. There's got to be something bigger there. And I think the teams that are successful long-term are the teams that have that. And I think teams that struggle maybe, or aren't as successful, don't have that clear picture, or it changes every time they change coaches. It changes. And I think that's one of the things that maybe happened at Washington Township, is that there were some different visions, kind of running around in that program. And it's very hard to be successful when you have that. I think, oddly enough, one of the things that I would identify as an important thing is a team office.
Yeah,
and it's funny because I had that my first few coaching places when I coached at Burke. I actually the aquatics director at the facility was Pete Morgan, who coaches for Curl, very well known coached Ed Moses and a bunch of other great athletes. But I was his assistant aquatic director, and I ran the kind of the in-house team. But to share an office with him and be able to bounce ideas off. And then, I moved down to Mission Bay and shared an office with Jack Roach and Larry Leibowitz. And then, and I think that that opportunity to get your staff together on a regular basis, and an office makes it so much easier to do that, is a real key to success. So I think if you're able to do that as a program, create that centralized space where coaches can come in and collaborate and bounce ideas off each other. And there are no new, very rarely do you come across a new issue in, the profession of coaching and the sport of swimming. And somebody usually has experienced it and has an idea about it. So I think that's really important. And then I think, the teams that are successful are the teams that take care of the basic things, right? They have a plan for what strokes should look like. They have a way of coaching that teaches athletes how to execute their races. And I think sometimes we try to make coaching a little more complicated than it is. It's really about taking care of kids and teaching them to be really good at a few fundamental things, and then allowing them to grow and flourish and explore their potential in the sport when they have that great foundation. And I think teams that are always chasing the next great idea or the next, innovation or new type of training, maybe you miss out on some of those basic fundamentals that are really, the true building blocks of the sport. We've talked before about how important efficiency is in the water, and just being able to move through the water with as much ease and as little effort as possible. And I think giving kids the chance to, or guiding kids to experience that and learn how to do that is such a key fundamental that a lot of teams miss, because they're wrapped up in, they got to get this much kicking in and this much in, in this energy system, even with their younger athletes, and get this much volume in, that kids don't learn how to use their body in the most effective way.
Yeah. And I think, watching and talking to you, one of the most valuable things that you taught me in terms of the technique was the stroke count and the N-1. I mean, that idea to me is a little like Inception. Like, you planted this idea in my brain, right? And it just kind of grew to what it is today. And I can tell you, like, some of the sets that we do are based on this idea of figuring out how to be more efficient. One of the favorite things that we do is like a 75 free, go 5 seconds over your best time, or 5 seconds faster than your best time, but take one less stroke each 25. Well, that is a challenge, right? But I'm asking you to go fast, to take less strokes. And you created this idea, you gave me this idea, and I've ebbed and flowed with it a little bit, but I know for sure if I look at Jake Mitchell and Drew Kibler, they were a product of being efficient and going fast. And that's all we're trying to do is be fast and efficient, efficient and fast. So, you know, I know that was an idea I stole from you. Do you have any other great ideas I can take from you today?
Well, and I don't know that I necessarily can take full credit for that idea myself. I just think that was observation and a lot of really some intense talks with the late Terry Laughlin, who started Total Immersion, and then Glenn Mills from Go Swim. It was just kind of something that we really hit upon as a key to getting better. And it's kind of like you said with that set of 75s, right? You give kids a problem to solve. They've got to figure out how to do it. Okay, do I take 2 more dolphin kicks off the wall?
Yeah.
Okay, well, is that kind of cheating by doing that? Well, yeah, maybe a little bit, but hey, if they get in that habit of taking 2 more dolphin kicks off the wall, that's probably going to be a good thing in the long run. Right. For them. You know, do they kick a little harder, right? Are they, you know, hesitating a little bit to get into the catch, you know, at the right time? All of those things are things that we can see and talk about to the kids, but they've got to experience it in the water. And if you're only ever, you know, doing sets on tight intervals and that type of thing, you know, there's a place for that for sure. But if that's all you're ever doing, right, the kids are only going to know how to swim at that speed. And I think that's where, you know, blending these ideas of say an Urbancheck system along with some USRPT, along with some stroke counting stuff, I think they all have their place in this recipe of how do we get kids to swim fast.
Right. And I think at the last skiing clinic, we heard someone talk about, well, we all have like the ingredients. It's just how we mix them together. Right. And so, sure. Yeah, we've got to figure out like, you know, how much of stroke counting are we going to do? How much of kicking are we going to do? And you've been all over the country, so I'm sure you've seen different recipes produce different kinds of success.
Yeah, and teams have been successful in very different models. But I think, you know, there are those key basic points that you come back to. You know, being very good at kicking and putting an emphasis on that. You know, because that's important for maintaining the body line, maintaining that momentum, allowing you to have that maybe little extra 1/4 inch of stroke length that allows you to drop a stroke kind of thing. You know, being great around the walls, you know, having a race plan. I think that's something that gets overlooked. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's no one right race plan, right? Because we see people swim and be successful even at the Olympics with all kinds of different, you know, race strategies. And I mean, it's a really interesting talk if people want to get an insight into training individual athletes to swim specific race strategies. At the Ask a World Clinic this year, Rick Bishop from LSU, now is at LSU, gave an interesting talk comparing how he trained Siobhan Howie and Maggie McNeil for Tokyo. 2 very different swimmers with different strengths and different really different ways of racing. And he gave some really good insights to his thought process and their thought process on how they approached the training and why they did it that way. So I think, you know, looking at your athlete, what are their strengths, capitalize on their strengths. Certainly you always want to minimize their weaknesses, but capitalize on their strengths and don't try to smash that square peg into the round hole.
Yeah.
You know, because no two kids are the same, even if they swim the same events.
Right. Yeah, that's the fun, isn't it, of coaching, is just being able to solve a problem. But the human factor is just that's the hard part. That's the challenge, right, of what we do, is that human piece. So